money traps that could cost you thousands of dollars. Today we're going to be talking about money traps that you're commonly going to find in your 20s. However, these money traps still do exist throughout your entire life. But we're specifically talking about your 20s because that's generally when you're going to start making a more steady income. That's generally where you're done with school, you're done with college, you've graduated, you have a steady income, a steady paycheck, probably making more money than you ever have before in your life. So I suggest that you take note of these money traps and you avoid them as much as you possibly can. So don't fall victim to these traps, and without further ado, let's get started with number one. So the first money trap we're going to talk about is avoiding to contribute to retirement accounts, such as a 401k or Roth IRA. There's lots of different retirement accounts out there. Retirement is so far in the future that a lot of times 20-year-olds don't consider contributing to a retirement account. And so it's often forgotten about because people want to spend their money on fun things. And you can still do that. I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm just saying that you should remember to contribute. So for example, let's say we save an extra $100 a month instead of eating out or, buying toys, things like that. So we have an extra $100 a month. If we were to throw that into a retirement account with an average return of 8% for 30 years, at the end of the 30 years, we'll have $150,000 in that account. And that's from about a $36,000 contribution. $100 a month for 30 years is about $36,000. Now, say we did that later in life once we hit our 30s. So instead of saving for 30 years, let's say we only save for 20 years, for example. Then the amount of money we're going to have at the end of that period, so at the end of the same amount of time, we're only going to have around $59,000, which is about a $90,000 difference. So compounding interest is huge. With compounding interest, the more time you have, the more it works in your favor. And like Einstein said, compounding interest is the eighth wonder of the world. And the second reason that you should be contributing to these accounts is because you get employer matches. So you're essentially getting free money. When you contribute to a retirement account, a lot of companies will match that to a certain percentage. And that's essentially just free money for your retirement account. So the sooner you start investing or putting money into your retirement accounts, the better. Now, granted, I am not a financial advisor, so remember that none of this is financial advice. So the second money trap that you're going to find in your 20s or throughout your life, and this is a huge one, I cannot stress this enough, is looking rich. So looking rich is kind of a broad topic. I wanted to kind of encompass a lot of things, right? Specifically spending way too much money on expensive dates, spending a lot of money on clothes, cars, homes, paying rent that you can't afford, things like that. A lot of people in their 20s, once they start getting a decent paycheck, they're going to start buying brand new cars or more luxury cars. Now, I can attest firsthand that this is not a great financial decision. Number one, cars are not assets. They are straight up liabilities. All they do, the second you buy them, especially if it's brand new, they depreciate. The second you get it, the second you drive it off the lot, it's worth considerably less. I think a lot of times cars just keep people poor. So the average annual ownership of having a car is around $10,700. Now that's a lot of your income, especially if you're buying a brand new car and you're paying $10,000 a year to not even own it. You're still paying it off. You're paying for more expensive insurance. You're paying for interest on the loan that you took. And you're paying pretty significant loan payments every month. That's going to take a big chunk out of your paycheck. You're much better off buying something a little bit older. Doesn't have to be, a rust bucket, but just something a little bit older that's not going to break the bank as much. That's a lot cheaper that you can own outright rather than have a loan on, paying interest and paying higher insurance for. So the whole idea of keeping up with the Joneses, essentially, oh, my neighbor got this, maybe I gotta buy this, or I gotta buy something better to kind of show off. That whole game of trying to look good, look like you have money, spending a lot of money on expensive dates, on expensive clothes, things like that are really gonna stress your paycheck. They're really going to stress your financial health. The average person has about $9,000 in credit card debt. So a lot of these people that are buying these fancy, nice things really can't afford it. A lot of times they just get caught up in that mentality of keeping up with the Joneses. So this is huge. If you can avoid looking rich, if you can spend less on a car, buy clothes that aren't designer, name brand, crazy expensive, then your financial health is going to be way stronger and you're going to be saving thousands of dollars in your 20s. Do I actually need these things? And where am I just trying to keep up with the Joneses or look rich? And that brings us to the third money trap to avoid, and that is putting too much money into speculative investments. I'm specifically talking about get rich quick schemes, right? There are so many things, especially on the internet today, that are going to guarantee you, invest this much money, you'll make this much back, it's easy money, and it's going to sound very appealing, but 99.99% of the time it's not going to be true. I see so many people spend too much of their paycheck or too much of their investment money throwing it into things that they don't understand or that are very speculative, like day trading or putting way too much money on a risky cryptocurrency with the whole idea of overnight I'm going to get rich, right? I'm going to make so much money with just $1,000 investment or $2,000 investment. Most of the time you're not going to end out on top in those scenarios. So invest in things that you understand. Now, just because you understand something doesn't mean you're automatically going to make money, but it's going to help you be a lot more financially safe, be a little bit safer, invest in the S&P 500 and things like that. But again, remember, I am not a financial advisor, so don't take this as financial advice. So moral of the story, understand it before you invest in it. That's going to help you. That's going to save a lot of money for you in the future. The fourth money trap to avoid in your 20s is not having a backup fund. Make sure that you have an emergency fund. There are so many people that I know personally that don't have any money. If they were to get into an accident and needed to cover $2,000, they couldn't. They would literally have to go into debt to pay for that emergency. So make sure you have an emergency fund available. Now, I'm not saying you need $1 million as an emergency fund just sitting around there, but make sure it's enough to cover your expenses for a little bit. Generally a rule of thumb is you want an emergency fund to cover at least 6 months of expenses because you never know what's going to happen. You never know if you might lose your job. Hopefully not. I hope you don't. But you could lose your job. We could go into recession or something like that. You might need a little bit more money. You could break your leg or something like that, and maybe your health insurance doesn't cover it all. You need money to reach your deductible for your health insurance, or maybe you don't even have health insurance, right? Just make sure that you have that emergency or backup fund available because you never know what life might throw at you. You never know what could happen. It's almost always better to be safe than sorry. So the fifth money trap to avoid in your 20s, and this is the last one I'm going to talk to you about, is a little bit different than the previous four. And this money trap is avoiding risk. Now you're probably sitting here thinking, well, hey, the last four money traps that you talked to us about were about, exactly that, avoiding risk, not taking on too much risk, specifically avoiding speculative investments and things like that. Avoiding risks in terms of avoiding your passions. And what do I mean by that? I kind of mean that in two ways, right? Number one is I think a lot of times in life, people have these desires, they have these passions, they want to travel the world. But, work, life gets in the way and they just never end up doing these things. So their passions become secondary at the bottom of the list, right? For example, I know tons of people who save for vacation. They'll save for a year, 2 years, 3 years, and then when they finally have enough for that vacation, they decide, well, hey, maybe we should wait a little bit, have a little bit more money, and they keep prolonging that vacation or that thing that they want to, or that passion that they want to pursue because they don't have the time, the resources, or the money to do it. Don't avoid pursuing your passions. Don't avoid investing in a business that you understand that you think is going to do really well, but you're too scared to start, right? Your 20s are a much better time to take risk than in your 30s. Because in your 20s, the advantage that you have versus your 30s, 40s, or 50s is that you have time. So just make sure that you're taking risk. Now, I'm not saying that you should quit your job today, start traveling the world, invest in a business that you haven't tested or anything like that. I'm just saying that a lot of times people avoid pursuing those ideas or passions that they have. You don't take anything with you when you die, so you don't want to save up for retirement and not ever spend any of the money you've been working so hard to get. So moral of the story is, obviously you don't want to risk everything on a whim, but take risk where you can, where you're comfortable doing so. Take a little bit more risk to pursue your passions or ideas or business ventures that you might have. Because I think a lot of times people are too scared to start. And you could come up with a million excuses or reasons why you can't pursue those passions or ideas. But figure out a way to make it happen. All right, those are my 5 money traps to avoid in your 20s. Now, I have experienced pretty much all of those. Avoid those at all costs, and you'll end up saving thousands of dollars. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it so much. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.